Well, good morning, everybody. I hope everybody got their fill of coffee and they're all ready for a riveting speech. No? Okay. So good morning, sisters, brothers, and friends. Bonjour, mes confrères et consoeurs et mes amis. You know, I'm grateful for the technology that allowed us to have online councils. But as I said at Atlantic Council, there's nothing that beats being in a room together. What a 3 years it has been since our last convention. 4 months after I was elected in 2019, we were dealt a devastating blow to one of our workplaces in Nova Scotia. The Premier at that time was Stephen MacNeil. He made a decision to proceed with the closure of Boat Harbour, the water treatment facility used by Northern Pulp in Pictou. That decision cost 240 of our members their livelihoods and put thousands more of workers' jobs at risk. To be frank, it was a decision that didn't have to happen the way that it did. There were solutions that our members, that our union, spent years advocating for. But Premier MacNeil took the easy way out at the expense of one of the province's key sectors. The president of Local 440, Don McKenzie, and I took every opportunity, whether it was interviews on TV, whether it was radio or in print, to make it clear that it didn't have to happen this way, and that MacNeil's lack of leadership was the reason our members were out of work. Nearly 3 years later, our union hasn't given up. Scott Doherty, their national rep, and I have been exploring every avenue to get our members back to work. MacNeil is no longer Premier, and the company and the provincial government are caught up in a lengthy legal battle, but we remain engaged and ready to support a path forward that maintains good jobs, protects the environment, and respects the local First Nation community. Today is actually a rather important anniversary. Scott and I had a meeting on August 9th of last year with the then Nova Scotia NDP leader, Gary Burrow, about Northern Pulp. I might have been a little upset with Gary over comments he made around Northern Pulp during a leadership debate for the provincial election, and I made sure to tell him so. I don't have anniversaries for every meeting that I attend, but this one was memorable, as that was also the day, as some of you know, I suffered a heart attack. So let me tell you, I have never been more thankful and more in awe of our healthcare workers who took such amazing care of me from intake to urgent care, through testing and recovery, through meal times and more. The entire team worked together to help me get rest and to get well. I would like to ask for every healthcare worker in the room to stand up right now and be recognized, please. Looking back, I find it ironic that the same week the pandemic was declared, I had an op-ed in the Halifax Chronicle-Herald condemning Premier MacNeil over the cuts he continued to make in long-term care. You see, we knew how bad things were in this sector before the pandemic revealed the vulnerabilities to the public. We knew the impact of budget cuts and the lack of support and respect for long-term care workers. Our members in healthcare all knew. Catho Forche and Noreen Rizvi have been fighting the same battle alongside members in Ontario, as we've been fighting in Nova Scotia, wondering why. Why the government didn't, hadn't, and won't increase funding for not-for-profit long-term care to create better homes for residents and safer workplaces for our members. It took deaths, preventable deaths, before government even began to acknowledge the crisis in long-term care. We had to fight for access for personal protective equipment. We had to fight against ridiculous measures like handing workers a single surgical mask in a paper bag and having them reuse the same mask all day. We had to fight for workers to be included in the outbreak response, for them to be protected, for them even to be thought of as worried, stressed human beings working under enormous pressure. And we had to fight for them to be paid. Healthcare workers shouldered the heaviest weight of this pandemic. From facing the unknown in those early days, weeks, and months, to dealing with the intense workloads and suffocating staff shortages that continue today. These workers were forced to be brave because our governments have been neglecting our healthcare system for years. We are continuing to fight for every member in healthcare, for every patient and every resident. As you've heard Catho Forche say many of times on behalf of workers in this sector, respect us, protect us, and pay us. In Nova Scotia, Premier Tim Houston was elected largely because he promised he would fix the healthcare system in the province. To his credit, within months of the election, he focused on one of the most urgent wounds in long-term care by addressing pay for continuing care assistance, known as CCAs. Unifor advocated for years for pay increase for CCAs, knowing that recruiting and retaining workers in this classification was very difficult and resulted in CCAs working short on almost every shift, racing to care for residents well before the pandemic hit. So when Houston announced this past February that his government was immediately increasing CCA pay by 23%, an average increase of $9,000 a year, we finally felt heard. Our CCA members felt seen and respected in a way they hadn't for many years. Premier Houston made the wage increase announcement in February, and by April, registration for the CCA training program had tripled. If that's not proof that paying workers works, I don't know what is. Attracting workers to the field and valuing them enough to get them to stay will change the lives of the workers themselves and every single resident in long-term care. More provinces need to follow Nova Scotia's lead and invest in the people who care. Friends, this is our victory. Unifor members fought for this and won. However, this is only the beginning. There are many other members of the healthcare teams across acute and long-term care who likewise deserve better pay. Through the Council of Healthcare Unions in Nova Scotia, we are currently at the bargaining table for health support workers in acute care, who work in classifications like power engineering, dietary, environmental services, laundry, and more. These workers are vital to the daily operation in hospitals, including patient well-being and infection control. And yet, some of them do not make a living wage. We've gone to conciliations because the government can't come up with a respectful wage package for these members. And while we're here in Toronto, there's a whole campaign happening back in Nova Scotia to pressure the Houston government to stick to their election promises of fixing health care by coming to the table with a respectful offer for these health support workers. We are keeping up the pressure. We have to. And with the support of members like all of you here, we can create stronger supports for all workers and stronger public services. Tim Houston isn't the only politician hearing from Unifor on a regular basis. Our Atlantic Regional Political Action Committee had a marathon of provincial elections during the pandemic. 3 of the 4 provinces held elections in 2020, and PEI we'll see in 2023. A member of the Black, Indigenous, and Worker of Color Committee, Angela Downey from Local 4606, put her name forward and ran for the NDP in her riding in Hammonds Plains, Nova Scotia. Angela, I know you're here this week, so thank you, sister. Newfoundland and Labrador elected another Liberal Premier, Andrew Furey, and he hit the ground running by assembling a panel of well-to-do former CEOs to guide a consultation on the future of the province, and they called the Big Reset. At the Atlantic Regional Council that took place in St. John's this past May, the president of the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labour, Mary Shortle, told us how she was initially invited to be a member of this panel of experts. But after a few meetings, it became clear to Mary that she could not put her name on any document created by this group. Their direction was clearly not one that supported workers and their communities. Our brilliant Unifor economist and researcher, Kaylee Thiessen, later analyzed their plan, which called for drastic measures that include cutting thousands of jobs and slashing public services, leaving many small, rural communities adrift. Evidence from other jurisdictions clearly shows that creating high-quality employment and investing in stronger public services would grow the economy and make higher levels of debt more manageable. But slashing jobs and services recommended by the Premier's team would create a downward spiral and more people into poverty and security. Kaylee led Unifor's contribution to a coalition of unions and progressive organizations in pushing back against the proposed cuts. I firmly believe her expert analysis and loud and progressive collective opposition to the Big Reset caused the Premier to rethink his plans and led to the 2022 budget being much less destructive than we expected. This is not to say Premier Furey has become our friend. No. He has caused a ruckus in the offshore sector and in the fisheries as well. FFAW is continuing to advocate and protect the inshore fishery in Newfoundland and Labrador. The majority of their members work as professional fish harvesters and processing workers. The industry remains vital to the economy, prosperity of coastal communities in the province. Yet the industry is under constant assault by few corporations that control seafood processing in Newfoundland and Labrador. And the provincial government has refused to hold these companies to account. Companies like Royal Greenland, a Crown Corporation of Greenland, and Ocean Choice International continually attempt to erode the small owner-operator fishery in favor of large factory draggers. And I can't talk about Newfoundland and Labrador without mentioning the bold steps taken by our Dominion grocery store workers at Local 597 in 2020 when they refused to accept treatment by their employer, Loblaws, and were on the picket line for 12 weeks. In the early days of the pandemic, these frontline workers, essential workers, were given a 2-hour pandemic pay, like many grocery stores across the country. And then, in a moment, and I'm sure we'll all remember, Loblaws and Sobeys mysteriously, and I'm sure completely by coincidence, ended the, quote, hero pay on the same day, saying it was no longer needed. Shame. The strike challenged our union, as we would normally send members and leaders to support the picket line, but with travel restrictions and concerns about members' health, we had to reinvent the wheel, hosting rallies from multiple cities at once via Zoom, as you saw in the year-in review video. But that's what we do. We rise, we meet any challenge to create new ways to support our fellow members. Workers from the offshore sector in Newfoundland and Labrador in Local 2121 had to stage an emergency rally on the eve of a deadline for the provincial government to secure investment for the Terra Nova offshore vessel to keep it operational. These jobs have been a great asset to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. Good-paying jobs, royalties, corporate taxes, and a big boost to the GDP in the province. We were glad to see Premier Fury come around in the end, and the Terra Nova will have an asset life extended for the next decade. The Terra Nova is currently in Spain for this work, and some of our members are there as well, getting it ready so it can return back home. And I want to acknowledge Local 2121's entire executive for their strong work on behalf of their members. Thank you for all that you have done and what you are continuing to do. Maintaining good jobs is not easy, but this is why we are here. We organize, we strategize, we build solidarity so that we can empower and protect workers. Members from the Atlantic region join the workers across the country to lobby federal governments in support of aerospace sector, the healthcare sector, to advocate for higher minimum wage and legislated paid sick days. When we fight back, we set new standards. And we make sure those standards are for everyone, not just us. The impact of what we do is more than just about paychecks. The work of our union saves lives. I want to mention the members from Local 219 in Nakawic, New Brunswick, whose leadership and determination most certainly saved lives. You'll hear more about these members and the lengths they went to for their membership tomorrow. But I'd have to take this opportunity to personally thank our 2022 Bud Jimmerfield Award winner, Mark Russell, for demanding accountability from an employer who was willing to risk the health and safety to save a few bucks. Health and safety is something we can never take for granted, and your commitment to these principles inspired me and reminded me why we do what we do. So thank you so much. And we've had a few heroic tales in the Atlantic in this past year. Just a few weeks ago, our members at Northumberland Ferries, Local 4508, saved the lives of nearly 200 people and their pets on board the ferry between Nova Scotia and PEI. This was after a fire broke out on the ferry. Worker safety training kicked in, and they beached the vessel on a sandbar, deployed the chute, and evacuated 183 passengers and 22 crew to life rafts and nearby boats. 3 of our members who worked in the engine room fought the blaze for 10 hours, working to contain the flames. This situation could have been a disaster if it not for our members' heroic work. We were relieved and proud to hear how they handled the situation. So, thankfully, everyone was safe. You saw the video yesterday where members from Local 1944 aboard the Atlantic Destiny, a commercial fishing vessel, experienced a similar emergency situation at sea in March of 2021 when their boat caught fire while they were 220 kilometers off the coast of Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. Fighting high winds and 8-meter waves, the crew initially managed to extinguish the fire, only to have it reignite and the vessel begin to take on water. They issued a distress call, and in addition to the U.S. and Canadian Coast Guard vessels responding, fellow Unifor Local 1944 members aboard the Maud Adams vessel arrived to help. The Atlantic Destiny sank, but every crew member made it off the vessel safely, and we could not be more thankful for that. I would be remiss if I didn't mention our Unifor members from Local 2182, who received those Mayday calls at the Canadian Coast Guard. Thank you for ensuring all those who are in need of assistance under the worst of circumstances get the help they need. These moments are dramatic. They are visible and understandable moments of risk. But every day we let employers set the standards, we are at risk. Every time we avoid politics, we are at risk. We need paid sick days for everyone. We need paid education leave in our collective agreements. And I want to give a shout out to Sobeys grocery workers in Cape Breton after a near 20-year fight. Congratulations to Local 1971. We need all workers to make a living wage. We need the Irving Shipyard and all employers who outsource the work of our members to stop. We need airline and offshore and fishery sector to stop contract flipping. We need our federal government to invest in healthcare, invest in passenger rail, and invest and give us anti-scab legislation now, not at the end of 2023. We need access to abortions. We need Bell to respect its workers and do more than just talk about mental health. And we can. And we can do it. We can achieve all of this together. A lot has happened in the near decade of Unifor. We are a force. We are capable. Our union becomes synonymous with organized labor in Canada. So much of our strong reputation comes from you, the folks who show up every day to organize, to strategize, bargain, and fight back. We are Unifor because of our strong activists and our locals, because of our skilled staff and our dedicated leadership. We are known nationally and internationally in a large part because of the charisma, bargaining expertise, and negotiating skills of our founding president, Jerry Dias. And I want to honor his legacy as a singular force, as a passionate labor leader, and as a friend. I wish him and his family well. We will continue after this convention with a new president, and we will heal, we will rebuild trust, and return to what we do best, raising a little hell. I have no doubt about that. You are our union, and I am damn proud of all of you and the work we have done together since Unifor was born. So thank all of you. Merci. I can't wait to see what we do next. Solidarity.